What's up, guys? This is Mike from Next Opportunity with your 5-Minute Friday. Today is going to be a little bit of a longer 5-Minute Friday because today I want to get into a couple of tips, tricks, and suggestions that I have for trail running in cold weather. Given how cold it has been, I wanted to maybe just share a few things that I use, a few tactics and strategies that I use to deal with these single-digit and sub-zero temperatures in cold weather, especially if you live where we do a lot of our operation, which is in Kentucky, and it has been really cold right now. So maybe to some extent this 5-Minute Friday may be coming a little bit too late, but maybe for your big run tomorrow or even next winter you can use some of these things. Keep in mind though that I am a runner just like you, and I'm not a pro, I'm not a medical professional, so please just take these as suggestions from one runner to another, and they are by no means going to work for everybody, but they're just some things that work for me, and I hope they maybe work for you. So first thing off the bat, number one, mittens. I like mittens when it comes to really cold weather, like under 20, mittens instead of gloves. That being said, a lot of people don't feel that way. A lot of people think gloves are just fine. For me though, I'm just kind of always cold, and especially my fingers. I have really just kind of weird, I don't know if I have circulation problems, never been to a doctor about it or anything, but my fingers are just always cold, almost year-round. And so what gloves tend to do, especially when it gets down into the teens and single digits and sub-zero, is gloves just kind of isolate each one of my fingers, and they say, hey, pinky finger, you've got to heat yourself now. And what mittens like this allow me to do is my fingers can then share the warmth. So I can wear the best pair of gloves in a 10-degree weather and my fingers will still be cold. Pair of mittens, my hands are actually sweating. Sometimes I wear things like this. Boop. Glittens, is that what we call them? And these are good, these are cool, they work a lot better than gloves do for me, especially when you close them up, and they work kind of like that. But still, ultimately, I like these big honking mittens because they are so warm and they keep all my fingers close together so they can share the warmth. It's also really easy to just slide one of those hand warmers up in there, and then my hands get toasty warm. Gloves just don't work for me. When it gets really cold, I go with mittens. Number two, space blanket. I usually call them an emergency blanket. These little silvery looking things can be a lifesaver if things get really bad for you and you're out on the trail in the middle of the woods, and if things get really bad, these things can save your life because they do keep a lot of heat inside if you wrap them around you. They're also incredibly inexpensive to buy, and they're incredibly lightweight. And they don't take up a lot of room, so you can shove them in a pocket or shove them in your pack, and you don't even know they're there. I actually keep one in my pack year-round for that very reason, because it's light and it's small and it makes no difference really whether it's there or not. So I figure if I have my pack on, why not have it in there? It can save your life. I think, honestly, you should run with one of these always, but especially when it gets really, really cold like it has been recently and like it's going to be the next several days. I would buy some of these. You can get them on Amazon for not very much. You can get a huge pack of them. I actually bought a pack of these several years ago. I've never used a single one of them. I still have like 20 of them, and I want to say they were like a few bucks for 20 of them. They're very inexpensive. So get a space blanket. Number three, headlamp. I almost always go out with my headlamp this time of year. Now, this doesn't really have anything to do with the temperature. I was kind of talking with this list about how to deal with cold weather, but this time of year, it's always a good idea to bring your headlamp with you no matter what time of day, because not only does it get dark early this time of year, but it gets dark quickly. So you might be out in the woods, especially in the woods, where you're under a lot of tree cover and you're not getting any sunlight. Late afternoon, it can get dark quickly, so having this in your pack with you if you're on a long trail run, especially in the afternoon, is a good idea. And even if you're out in the morning, again, if you've got a pack on that weighs, I don't know how much packs weigh, honestly, but I mean, what's it going to kill you to throw that in the back just to be safe? Take some extra batteries with you too. That will help. Next, extra gloves. So I talked about mittens versus gloves. Some people might go with gloves, some people might go with mittens. I'm a mitten guy when it gets really super cold, but nonetheless, anytime I'm out on a trail, now this doesn't apply to road running. Road running is a different story. I'm talking about trail running right now. When you go out on a trail, I think it's always a good idea to pack extra gloves. Even if it's cheapos like this is one of those like cotton gloves that you get at the dollar store anywhere, and they literally cost $1. I think it's always a good idea to bring extra gloves with you when you're out on a trail in sub-freezing temperatures, because you never know when you're out on a trail when you might run into some water crossings, especially if maybe it has been wet, or you try to cross some ice and you actually break through it. There might be some splashing, and sometimes your gloves get wet. When we were out on the Warhammer course this past last week, we kind of ran it out. There were several water crossings, and I didn't actually bring any extra gloves. I thought about it. I normally do, but I didn't. We crossed a lot of creeks. Some of them were actually crotch deep, splashed all over the place. My gloves got wet, and they became blocks of ice. So the only thing worse when it's 10 degrees outside, what's worse than having no gloves at all? Having frozen gloves. So always bring an extra pair with you. I think that's a good idea. Next, face masks. I think face masks like this, these neoprene face masks, are really cool because what a lot of people do is they'll take a buff or some other type of headwear and bring it up over their nose to cover their face and chin and cheeks, and that's a good idea. But what I've found is that as you're breathing through those things like a cloth, your breath will condense, and that gets wet, and then it gets frozen, and then again, like the glove thing, you've got a frozen thing on your face. These neoprene face masks, they're great at keeping your face warm, even if you do have a beard. But they also have holes in the mouth and holes in the nose, so you can breathe much more easily, in my opinion, than you can if you have something like a buff or a scarf over your face. So these things, again, are relatively inexpensive, and you can get them from different suppliers with different designs on them. So I went with the Skull, and again, this thing was like $10, and I've had it for 4 or 5 years, and it's still in perfect condition, and it's great for covering your face, but still being able to breathe when it's friggin' cold outside. To go along with that, yes, so that takes care of your chin, your cheeks, your nose. You wear a hat, it covers your head and your ears and your forehead, but what about your eyes? Vaseline. That's my little trick, and I didn't come up with it. It's pretty common, but I like to take Vaseline, rub it on my face, especially around my eyes and the parts that are still exposed to the cold air, because any kind of barrier you can put between your skin and the cold air, especially if it's windy, is going to help you on a long, long training run. And sometimes, if I know I'm going to be out there for a long time and it's really cold, I will really slather this stuff on all over my face. Looks weird, sounds weird, but believe me, it makes a huge difference, especially if it's windy. Lastly, wool socks. This is something that I heard for a couple years as I was getting into trail running. You gotta wear wool socks, you gotta wear wool socks. And I said, you know, I'm good, I have my own socks. But these puppies, and these are just regular old wool socks that I got at the store, but I gotta tell you, look into it. If you don't already wear wool socks in the winter, wool, as opposed to anything else, keeps my feet toasty warm. Now, I don't know why that is. I don't know anything about fabrics. I just know I've started to wear wool socks when it gets really cold, and if I wear my regular performance socks, my little toesies will freeze. So that's a couple of my suggestions. A quick update on some of the upcoming races. Rough Trail 50K. Hopefully registration will open up by the middle of this month. I appreciate everybody's patience while we get that going. But as you know, many of you might know, the rules are we cannot advertise a race without a permit from the Forest Service. So we're working with them to make sure that we get that done. I'm got a few more T's to cross and I's to dot before we can do that. So once we get that done, we will open registration for that, hopefully by the middle of the month. But again, we are not setting a specific date because we are going to wait until we get the necessary approvals to do that, as well as the Redbird Crest. Redbird Crest 100K will be happening again in 2018. Thank you so much again to everybody who helped make 2017 a success. We are going to be doing Redbird Crest 100K in 2018, but same situation there. we're getting everything lined up, getting all the necessary approvals, getting all the details ironed out before we announce the official date. So thank you for all of your patience with those 2 races, but they are coming soon, I promise you. That's it for today. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Get out and run, and I will talk to you next Friday.